All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this cold, wintry day, and it's actually a great day for a cold day because that's what we're going to be talking about today. These long winter days when you might be suffering with seasonal affective disorder and how it can impact you, and most importantly, what to do about it. So we have an amazing guest today, Dr. Sarah Reyna. Welcome, Dr. Sarah.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you here. And if you don't know of Dr. Reyna, she started Beautiful Alma Acupuncture about 10 years ago. She's a board certified herbalist, not only as an acupuncture degree, but she's actually recently, in the last couple of years, become a doctorate of acupuncture and oriental medicine. And the reason that we're really excited to have her on today is her doctorate dissertation was the holistic treatment of major depressive disorder with integrative medicine. So definitely an expert in this area and something that we know affects so many people, obviously this time of year. So welcome, Sarah. Thanks for being here. And what would you say, just to kind of give us an idea if you're watching and maybe you're wondering like, ooh, I wonder if I'm more depressed in the winter because of S.A.D. Give us a little overview of what seasonal affective disorder is.
Sure. So seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, is a subtype of depression, and it's something that's only situational in the winter. And it comes from having decreased light. So not having as much sunlight, having kind of those gray days is what triggers it. And it's something that comes in the winter and then generally gets better in the spring for people. And it can be mild to moderate. It kind of depends on the person. So some people say, well, I'm not really depressed, but I'm kind of feeling like, oh, I'm not interested in doing my normal things. Maybe I don't want to do as many social things. I don't feel like, getting things done. I just kind of want to lay around and do nothing. And some of that can be normal. Some of that's our hibernation phase in the winter. But some people say, like I'm feeling a little bit hopeless, or I'm feeling a little bit like, I'm not interested. And when that tends to come in the winter and then goes away in the spring, that's what SAD is. Okay. So
yeah, I guess that'd be something I'd be curious of, because I noticed for myself with kind of having like in the fall, especially it's summer in the fall, like I'm going really steady and I'm pushing myself.
Yep.
And when winter hits, I feel like there is kind of a natural want to rest period.
Yes, and that's normal, and that's good. That's a good thing.
Okay.
Because we're so busy, especially in Minnesota. For those of you who are listening from Minnesota, we have such a busy summer because we've got to pack it all in. And so by fall, we're kind of like, okay, I'm still going strong, but I'm running out of energy. So some of that hibernation, I always call it hibernation phase, but we do kind of want to like go inward, and that's good. But if you're really like, I don't feel like going out with my friends, or I don't want to like make the effort to go to church, or I don't want to do my sports as much, some of that can be like, oh, it's kind of affecting my life a little bit.
Got it. Okay.
So that's a big difference.
Yeah. And are there people that you see it affecting more common than others, aside from geographical location?
It really depends. I think many people are affected by it. Definitely people who have lived in sunnier climates are affected more in general, but it can affect everybody, broad spectrum, any age, any ethnicity, pretty much anybody.
Okay,
so.
Got it. And what led you to get into this topic in general?
I actually, I specialize in treating mental illness of all types, depression, anxiety, including seasonal affective disorder, also post-traumatic stress and bipolar, things like that.
Okay.
And my interest comes from a family history of pretty severe depression. I have severe depression myself. And it's treated well with medication, but it's not all the way. And so I always have that kind of, I just kind of don't feel like doing anything. It gets me 80% there. And so that's why I specialize in that with my acupuncture. And so between acupuncture, herbal medicine, and actually seeing you, Dr. Ty, the kind of chiropractic that you do really helps me feel like I'm more optimized in my life and what I'm able to do. So that's where that interest comes from, a personal interest.
Definitely. That's awesome. And I think that's, as practitioners, we can relate so much better when we have that personal experience, and especially with something like this, because it impacts at such a deep level for that emotional piece and that own self-esteem and fulfillment in life.
Exactly. And fulfillment's a really great word, I think, for that feeling fulfilled. Because sometimes it's like, well, I'm doing the things, I'm going through the motions, but I don't feel fulfilled. I don't maybe feel the kind of joy that I normally do. And that can be a sign of that seasonal affective disorder.
Right. Okay. I think that's a good point, too, as a differentiation between a natural hibernation period.
Yes.
Because you're like, oh, I'm actually rejuvenating, but once you feel rejuvenated, you want to be able to do things again. But if you never feel really rejuvenated, fulfilled, then that's a good sign.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how, with your contrast then of having been in more of the medical world with the medications versus the holistic or the Chinese medicine world, what are some of the differences in how S.A.D. is looked at?
Well, in Western medicine, it's kind of tricky because sometimes they'll say like, oh, we can put you on an antidepressant for a little while, but they don't treat your whole organism. So, it may be like, oh, well, some of that like maybe sadness or rundown feeling goes away, but I still don't have that joy. And sometimes that's what happens. It's more a numb feeling. And the way that Chinese medicine looks at it is you have to treat the whole organism. If you don't treat everything going on, it's not going to be effective. It's about balance. So the main pattern of diagnosis, it depends on the individual, but generally it's something we call liver qi stagnation. And what that means is that the liver is in charge of kind of the emotional movement of your qi or your energy. And so what that translates to is basically that things just aren't circulating well. That can translate into like blood flow, but not necessarily. It's more just like, oh, I just kind of feel stuck and I don't feel like I'm getting that movement in my life and that, maybe even like intellectual movement, like I'm not interested in things or emotional. I'm not connecting. And so by moving that, it helps not only those emotions, but also those feelings of being stuck and some of that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I could see with being stuck when you have so much stress in life in general, it's easy to kind of like have it hit you and just hold on to it.
Yeah. And one of the things that one of my patients specifically, I've had multiple stories like this, many, many stories. But a lot of times when people come for acupuncture for, kind of having that pattern, what they'll do is they'll say, oh, I went home and I painted my entire kitchen, or I went home and I reorganized my office, because they had that movement. So it translated into this momentum in their life too. So it can be that feeling of stuck and then, oh, I can move and I feel free and open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. And that's such a fun way to see the reflection happen in life, where it's like, oh, my internal energy is changing, so now my outward expression can change as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
How does, I guess I'm curious then if you have, looking at people and kind of treating it a certain way or doing certain things, are there patterns you see people do, or maybe you've experienced that yourself, that tend to perpetuate the depressed feeling or the sad, that make it worse?
I think the worst thing that you can do is to get more stuck. So even though you don't feel like doing anything, it's good to keep your schedule. It's good to still go to the gym, to get up at sort of a normal time. Some of that might shift a little bit. So with that hibernation phase, sometimes, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to sleep a little bit longer in the winter. That's okay. But I'm not going to sleep all day and stay in my pajamas all day. So, it's kind of balancing that. My number one recommendation is going outside. The thing that I found is that exercise is really good. Obviously, we know that's going to help move your body and move your emotional mind, right? Mm-hmm. But going outside to exercise, so something simple like going for a walk, but it can also be like skiing or snowshoeing or doing something else more like a winter sport, but it can just be walking. It kind of has double, it counts double, because you get the movement and you get the outside. So outside really does that. And so even for people, if they can't exercise or there's some reason that they can't have a lot of movement, if they go sit outside or even sit by the window and look outside, I recommend that a lot. Spend 15 minutes a day looking out the window and not doing anything. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that kind of creates that, it shifts your brain chemistry. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason for that is that nature does that automatically, but it's also because this is a lack of light, a lack of sunlight in seasonal affective disorder. Mm-hmm. So having that, it actually triggers through your eyes by bringing in that light. It actually triggers something in your brain, which is why a lot of times people will use light therapy. They use the full spectrum lights. And that's because it triggers that chemical change. And that's why it's really effective.
Got it. Okay.
So another recommendation that I have is people can actually get full spectrum light bulbs for their house. So I recommend not using compact fluorescence, not using fluorescence. And I actually tend to have a sensitivity to that. Those actually give me migraines. And so what I found is when I use the little bit more full spectrum light bulbs in all of my house, it triggers that in my brain, and it's really good for my brain. So. Okay.
Nice.
Kind of some easy things you
definitely. Can do. And I like the idea of if it's in your main light bulbs, then you don't need like the full spectrum light box just to be sitting there looking at it.
I can't just sit there in front of a light box. It's not going to happen. I can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Oh. There's someone I was introduced by a colleague of mine a while ago about how important the natural light is, the full spectrum light into your eyeballs, and he talked
Yes.
about how it affects melatonin production, so it helps sleep at night. And
Yes.
I've actually been doing like little sun breaks during the day. If I'm have a day
Good.
where I'm doing more office work or more inside, I'll step out on our balcony and just let the sunlight hit my eyes for a couple minutes and then go back to
It's
work.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually chose where my office is located in my clinic based on the light because there's big, huge windows, so I'm getting all that light in all the time.
Nice.
And so I don't use shades or anything else because I'm trying to get that to trigger in my eyes.
Okay,
So.
wonderful. Yeah. Anything else that you see as common mistakes?
I think also because of that natural hibernation phase, I think it's also important to respect that part. And so one of the things that my husband and I do in the winter months, for 6 months, we go away for the weekend once a month to a retreat center where we can just relax and rejuvenate and read, and they cook for us there, and it's a really nourishing place. And so what I found is that it seems like that would be counterintuitive, like, oh, I got to keep moving. But actually, that's how we rejuvenate, and we come back, and then I feel more motivated to do the things that I need to do. So I think respecting your body's natural tendency to need rest, you need to also have that. Mm-hmm. And then it makes it easier to do the other things, go for the walks, be outside, do some of those things.
Got it. Yeah, and I like that idea because it's easy. I find sometimes I get in this dilemma myself where I'm knowing I need rest, but if I am watching my computer or watching like a screen, I know that the screen light is the opposite of the sunlight,
yes.
and that's going to deplete my system. And even though I'm maybe lying around all day, it's not very
yes.
rejuvenating. So
yes.
I feel kind of like you were describing before, that stagnant, stuck energy.
Yes.
So it sounds like the retreat center helps you kind of do one weekend of like pure rest, and then you can have a weekend of more movement, outdoor time, and enjoyment.
Exactly.
Instead of this middle ground of like I'm kind of resting but not really rejuvenating.
Yes, and we actually we walk for our meals to a main lodge, so we're outside walking, 4 times a day to and from, and I think that's really good. So, what I recommend for my patients is 2 things. 1, take some time where you have a pajama day and you get to relax. But I want that to be, you can use screens, but not for the whole day. So you need to have other activities. Maybe you go for a walk, maybe you sit and look out the window, but you need unscheduled downtime. And you also need non-screen time. So I tell them, like, if you want to just lay around and look out the window and watch people walk by, you can do that for an hour. That's great. That's perfect. You're going to feel more motivated after that. And I also tell them, like, just make sure you have time for yourself, really good self-care time, whether that's music or art or reading or cooking or whatever it is that you like to do, to take that time and really cherish that time as being really important, because it's really important for your mental health. And a lot of us, we don't put priority in that. We're like, oh, I got to get this done, and I know I'm that way. And so by going away once a month, it's like, I can't do any of it. And that's what I need. The only way to do it is put me in the woods where I can't do anything. It's great.
Great idea. Yeah, we talk about that with our practice members a lot too, how fine motor movements, like you mentioned, the art or cooking would be a really good one too. That actually helps the emotional processing side of the brain. So it's
that's
a really
great.
good combo,
Cool.
I remember one time my wife and I were at a glass mosaic, like you take little pieces of glass and make a tile out of it.
Uh-huh.
And so it's a very fine motor type of activity. And for myself, I'm generally more analytical brained. But doing that activity, all of a sudden, it's like I could feel my emotional centers opening up so much more, and
it's amazing,
just how much
right?
processing can happen that way.
I used to make jewelry, and I really love beads, and I kind of just did it for fun to modify some of my own things. And recently at the retreat center, they had a bunch of beads out, and I started making bookmarks with beads. And that fine motor movement, those tiny little beads, I was so focused on it. And I was like, oh, maybe I didn't rest as much, because I spent 2 days of our 5 days doing it over New Year's. And I thought, maybe I'm not going to be as rested. I was worried about that while I was doing it, but it was so fun I couldn't stop. I made like 15 bookmarks. And after that weekend, it was the most rested I felt. And it really lasted. So there really was a shift there, that focus, but it was a very relaxing, creative kind of movement for me emotionally.
Yeah. So I think that's a huge tip, is to really prioritize downtime in a way that's going to rejuvenate you.
Exactly. Not just watching TV all day, because that just doesn't quite do it.
When it's a light issue to begin with S.A.D,
exactly.
You have to restore with the right type of light, and the screens are going to do the opposite.
Exactly. So go out there and do all the fun things that you always wish you had time to do. That's what I think.
And how do you, from a Chinese medicine perspective, I'm curious how acupuncture, I know you talked about moving the qi, but between that and the herbs, how do those different things fit in to help something like this?
They're really amazing because they're not like, for example, I'm going to go a little off topic, but like when you have trouble with sleep and you take herbs or use acupuncture, it's not a sedative. It doesn't put you to sleep. It balances everything in your body to help you sleep. And it's the same thing with depression and with seasonal affective disorder. What it does is it creates this movement and this balance in your body, kind of a homeostasis. And by doing that, it releases that feeling of being stuck. So there are specific points that I do. I especially like to use a lot on the head because the head points are really good for emotional health. And they're also ear points. And so I find that when I do that, I tell people you're not going to change who you are. Like if you're irritable, you're not going to stop being irritable, but you're going to have like a little more time. Like I had one patient who said, I lose my temper in 1 minute, and now that I've had acupuncture, I lose my temper after 10 minutes. Like she was like, it had a very measurable thing for her. But what it does is it just kind of creates some space. So you have a little bit more tolerance, you have a little bit more patience, or it can be a little bit more uplifting. If you're having trouble with feeling uplifted and feeling motivated, it can help you so that, okay, now I actually feel like I'm going to go do some things. So it balances all the chemicals in your brain. It actually releases serotonin and those happy endorphins. So, and acupuncture and herbs both do that. So generally what I do is I treat people with acupuncture. And then if they're like, I need a little bit of help in between the treatments, like I need a little bit more, I'll add herbs in. And that's kind of like a daily, it's a pill they take, but it's like a nutritional way to like rebalance the body. And it works really, really well.
Nice. Yeah. I love any approach, similar with the chiropractic in our office where it's helping the body work its best, not trying to counter something in the body. Like, you feel awake, I'm going to stuff down your awake feelings and make you fall asleep.
Exactly.
It's like, no, I'm going to let the body be balanced, and you get more in tune with the natural rhythms and the natural cycles. Exactly. And that health comes from within.
Exactly. And people feel it, right? They get off my table and they're like right away like, oh, I feel so much better. Mm-hmm. Oh, I feel so much more peaceful. I feel so much more relaxed. So it's good.
Yeah. That instant change it's very confirming that they're doing the right thing then.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Well, and they get the downtime when they do our treatments, right? Mm-hmm. Both you and I, they're getting that time to just relax and some time for themselves. And that's really good too.
Right. Yeah. This last weekend, for the first time ever, I did a float tank over in Minneapolis.
Oh, I wanted to do that forever.
It was pretty fun. So if you don't know what it is, they said it's like 800 pounds of Epsom salt in a small, looks kind of like a coffin that you climb into, and then you shut the door, and there's no light, no sound, and you just sit, and because there's so much salt, you're so buoyant, so you just float there, and it's designed to just like be a sensory deprivation experience, and you eliminate all that, and you can just settle in a really deep way.
So I want to do that. It was a fun
experience.
I know a lot of people who have done it, and they all really loved it. So
yeah,
cool.
All right. So as we're wrapping up here today, Dr. Reyna, any final words or parting thoughts you want to leave with everyone?
I think the big thing is just respect your body and listen to it. And if it feels like something's out of balance, try some things that make you happy and take the priority for yourself. And based on that, if you need a little bit more help, then you can seek other outside help. But a lot of times, if you just listen to what's going on inside of you, that's going to be enough and make things feel more balanced and happy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. If you are interested in more, we'll put Dr. Reyna's info in the comments section below, and you guys can feel free to reach out. Great practitioner and highly recommended. So thank you so much today. We appreciate your time and your insights.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Bye, everyone.